Live. This is Coffee with Will, brought to you by Northwest Furniture and Mattress and Grande Hospital. And I am sitting here today with Ashley O'Toole.
Hello.
He is a local realtor for John J. Howard and Associates,
That's
correct?
right, yep.
And he is here to join me to talk about, well, himself. So thank you so much for being here with me today, Ashley.
Great to be here. Thank you for asking me.
So tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me your story about how you got to LeGrande and why you're here.
Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, well, originally I'm from Missouri, born and raised suburbs of St. Louis. Joined the Navy right out of high school. The Navy was awesome. Obviously, world travel, getting to meet a lot of folks, great people from around the world, around the country. One of the people that I met is who is now one of my best friends, originally from this area. So that kind of ties it together how I got here to LeGrande, I suppose you could say. We were stationed in Southern California together for 6 years, got out of the Navy around the same time. They decided to come home here and start going to EOU, and I stuck around in Los Angeles for a few years. Went to college for music, did the entertainment industry thing for a few years.
Yeah.
My day job down there, I was actually a Hollywood tour guide.
Which is pretty fun, you got to admit. Like that,
No, it was
like is pretty cool. I mean, taking people around and showing them Hollywood is pretty cool.
Yeah, it was an all right job. I really enjoyed it. You know, the good days were great. The bad days weren't so great. What makes a bad day?
You say that about any job.
Insane traffic. I know.
Oh.
What makes a bad day for a Hollywood tour guide are things like insane traffic, unruly passengers who are being impatient, especially because of the bad traffic. But, you know, more often than not, it was great tours, great day after day. Hollywood Boulevard, Sunset Strip, the Hollywood sign, Celebrity Homes, Rodeo Drive. It was about a 2-hour tour that covered like 20 miles in the LA, Hollywood area. Did that for a number of years, but ultimately that may have been a big part of why I just sort of got burned out on Hollywood.
I was actually going to ask you, so
you
you told me that you didn't really enjoy that big city life. Why didn't you enjoy it?
Well, it was a real rat race down there. You know, there was very, very lacking in a sense of community down there and kind of working together to achieve common goals and things like that. I know that sounds so corny, but down there in the entertainment industry, people are wanting to latch on to already successful folks and try and climb ladders that way and really stepping on each other and being very competitive with one another. Whereas trying to find somebody who's also a nobody, let's work together, let's create something original and great, let's be famous together, that doesn't come around as often as it probably should. So I think being a Hollywood tour guide exacerbated that because I'm also just day after day seeing the good and the bad of literally living in Hollywood.
So now here's the big question, the really big, deep philosophical question.
Hit me.
Who was your favorite star that you met while you were in Hollywood?
I'd say my most, if I could reword it as my most memorable experience.
Most memorable experience.
Richard Simmons.
Richard Simmons. You got to meet Richard Simmons in the flesh. I thought he only existed as a phantasm that was came on the television at certain
No, he's a real deal. His hair, his high socks, it's all real. We were on a tour and we were outside of his home, which actually I didn't hit his house a lot because it was kind of out of the way. But it's a beautiful, beautiful house with giant stone columns and archways and things. And his mailbox is a replica of his house. Like a little miniature replica of his house.
I thought you were going to say his hair.
No kidding.
That's awesome.
So that was the main reason I would always go to Richard Simmons' house because it was like, hey, cool house, look at that mailbox. But the one day, the timing was just perfect, and he was walking out of his front door to get into his car, and he must have been on his way to some television appearance himself, because he was in full Richard Simmons workout regalia, and he came out and just made everybody in the van laugh and made sure we were eating right and that sort of thing. It was really, really funny. And that was certainly one of my more memorable experiences there doing that thing.
Okay, so now that being said, what was your least memorable experience being in Hollywood? I mean, if it is television appropriate, because we have children that watch the show. Probably more for the
I can word it nicely. Most of my sour experiences came from, unfortunately, locals down there, not the tourists, but the locals who don't like tourists, and so they certainly don't like vans full of tourists, and so you would even get stuck at red lights with conversations with somebody next to you who just doesn't want you in their city. And I have to remind them, this is a van full of people who paid for your car and went to see your crappy movies. Let's have a little respect here. They want to see, your town. Sometimes it would get pretty bad, though. There would be just these knucklehead teenagers in Beverly Hills areas that would pull up alongside you and throw water balloons at us and that kind of thing. So that was really sour. I mean, most of the bad experiences with tour guides, I unfortunately have to blame on the locals down there. And again, that just continued to exacerbate and make it very clear why I didn't want to live down there anymore.
So now that being said, you came to LeGrande. You said your friend lived here. He went to EOU, and you decided you would tag along.
Yep.
But you have stuck around. You're heavily involved with local, local events, local main streets. I believe you're also involved with the Eastern Oregon Film Festival, correct?
Not so much.
Oh, okay.
No, they have my full support, but generally by that time of year, I've got my hands full with other projects and things. And,
Absolutely.
And but again, the film festival is a great event that LeGrande really is lucky to have, and it's ran by some great folks who I consider good friends of mine. And go to the film festival every year. Don't skip it.
So now, why did you decide? I mean, you probably weren't in love with it when you came here, but why did you decide? And I think the bigger question here is you worked in the creative industry, correct? So, I mean, you were a tour guide and you were a host of a show for a while.
Yeah, I tried to do a few television show pilots down there, and my focus though was the music industry. I mean, I went to a music college down there. I was in a band. I managed another band, and everything was good. There was a decent amount of success and fun being had down there, but again, it just wasn't worth living in Los Angeles to do all of those things.
Absolutely.
So, no, a friend of mine from the Navy, she is from Pendleton originally, and when we got out of the Navy at around the same time, she decided to move to LeGrande to start going to EOU. I started visiting LeGrande a couple of times throughout those years, really just fell in love with the people, the scenery, the environment around here. And when my wife and I were at our wits' end down in Los Angeles, we literally just looked at a map and said, who do we know where, who's got the best opportunities, where do we want to go?
You must have been pretty fed up.
Pretty fed up, yeah. We had it narrowed down to a couple of different cities in America, and our friends up here in LeGrande really, you could say, really called us up here. I mean, set us up with job opportunities and a place to live. And I mean, it was really amazing. So it was a great start to moving here, and then easily fell in love with, like I said, the scenery, the people. There's a lot to love about Eastern Oregon.
So here's a question for you, and this is a question that I've kind of contemplated a lot, being someone who works in media, someone who works in the arts, and a lot of my fellow students, I was a graduate of EOU, and so a lot of my fellow students, when they graduated, they took off to Portland, or they took off to, to Texas or whatever, kind of a thing. So you have kind of had the opposite effect, where you went someplace that was big, and then you're back in the small town area.
Yeah.
And, although you're not playing music for a living, you're pretty still involved with the. You host the music at 10 Depot and those kinds of things.
I host the open mic every first Tuesday at 10 Depot Street, 8 to 10 on every first Tuesday of the month. And I also sit in with other musician friends of mine who have bands and other projects that they're going along with. I get asked to participate in. I was in the Ring of Fire at the Elgin Opera House this past year. I was one of the Johnny Cashes, you could say. And that's actually propelled my love for music and creativity. The fact that I'm up here with a day job, so to speak, and my creative outlets are more of just creative outlets. I don't have to depend on them for a living. And so it's taken the focus, it's taken the pressure off, you could say.
Really? Huh.
And I've just been able to kind of sit back and enjoy it, and not, I could say yes to a music project and not worry about what it's going to pay me or that kind of thing, and just do it for the love of doing it.
So the question then is should someone who is interested in being involved in the arts and being involved with music or writing or whatever, should they maybe consider a residence in some place like LeGrande, or would you suggest that they go out?
I would say that LeGrande will surprise you. I mean, when
it did me, for sure.
Right. I think LeGrande is really full of surprises for people that come here and spend any amount of time here from a large city. I remember not very long ago, I was at 10 Depot Street, and sitting at the bar was just a younger couple sitting there that I had never seen before, and I just said, "Hey, what's going on? I'm Ashley. Welcome to LaGrande. I don't recognize you. And they were like, and they just said, yeah, they had just come over the Blue Mountains Pass. They almost died, and they were just like, they literally just took the first exit they could, which is the downtown LaGrande exit. Found the first bar they could, and then we ended up having a great night of music that night. And I talked to them later, and they were just, oh my gosh, LaGrande, we had no idea. And these guys were from Portland, and doing
that explains why they almost died.
Yeah, no, they were trying to do Portland to Boise in a day, and we're just floored by LaGrande, really surprised them. So I think that's a really good tale that's sort of indicative of what we have here. I mean, there are a lot of great opportunities for creativity in this town. I mean, the college helps a lot with that, but we've also got a fair amount of venues, places for people to perform music or set up their art installation and things like that. So
I think the problem comes when you start wanting to make your living doing it, and that's where it gets kind of a little bit more dicey, I think, because you don't have as much ability to. Like we next week we're having Nicole Lewis on this show, and she's someone who has recently traveled to Nashville because she decided she wanted to take her music to the next level. But at the same time, there are certain circumstances, like LaGrande Live for me, where I actually do make my living doing the thing that I studied to do in the arts. You know?
That's
so
right.
I guess it's not really it can't really be an either or thing, but there certainly is opportunities here.
There are opportunities, and I mean, it is a small town, and so it is possible for there to be a saturated market of people who are creative like ourselves. I mean, the pie is only so big. And the more people doesn't mean a bigger pie, it means more slices, smaller slices. And so the success, like anything else, the success just goes to the people that really want it the most and live and breathe and think it every day. I don't necessarily live and breathe and think creative success every day because I have a day job. I'm happy to be a realtor and a property manager in LaGrande, and that's totally sustainable, and I can raise a family and keep a roof over our heads on that. So I just see these creative outlets as just that, outlets, fun.
Absolutely. So now that being said, tell me a little bit about what you've been involved in here in LaGrande and what you're going to continue to be involved in. Because I'm taking it you are going to stick around a little bit.
I'll be here for a while. I'll be here for a long while. No, I've got a young son that was born a year and a half ago here, and we'll have a small family that we're going to keep here for a long time. Seems to be a great place to raise a kid so far. But as far as involvement goes, from the beginning, almost from the very beginning, I got involved with the LaGrande Main Street program.
Thomas.
Thomas, and back then the director was Elena Garner, then it was Cyrus Siddiqui, now it's Thomas Taylor. And so I've just been able to connect with all of these directors and the board members and things like that, and they've been, of course, I assume they've been happy to have me as a volunteer and somebody that's willing to be motivated and work for them. And I'm proud to be one of the founding members of the Eastern Oregon Beer Festival, along with a couple of other cohorts.
It's pretty amazing what they do with that thing.
Yeah.
I just learned a little more about that and about the kind of money that they bring in with that.
Yeah.
It's a very, very cool event.
It is a lot of fun too.
LaGrande Live, if you had not been to the Eastern Oregon Beer Festival and you enjoy anything with the alcoholic twinge, you should go next year.
That's right, August 19th. At the Union County Fairgrounds, and we're going to have, I'm sure we'll probably have close to 50 brewers, close to 80 beer. I mean, if it's anything like we've had in last year or anything like that. And it is a big production. It takes a lot of planning. We're already having our meetings now to start planning next year's beer festival.
Wow.
And then another big event is just a few days from now is the New Year's Eve block party. That's also hosted by LaGrande Main Street. But I started that. I'm the coordinator of that. So I got a busy couple of days here ahead of me while we're getting set up for that. But that should be a great time too. And this year the forecast is looking much better than it has in years past.
So here's a question for you. We have a very, very sort of sense of tight-knit community, especially in the downtown area here right now.
Yeah.
Does a bigger town like Los Angeles have any sort of feel like that? Or is it more, I don't know, is it more detached? Is it more like different? Like how is that?
Well, there's a sense of community, but there's not a large, I mean, there's always going to be, like for your typical Los Angelino, there's going to be a sense of pride from where,
Angelino.
I know, that's what they're called. There's going to be a certain sense of pride for being an Angelino, go Dodgers and all that stuff. But, LA is so massive that it has to be broken into smaller communities. I mean, there's a sense of community, some kind of sense of community in Hollywood. There's some kind of sense of community in the downtown Los Angeles area. And and things like that. But tight knit, I wouldn't use that word. In my experience, I wouldn't use much of that word for down there. I certainly feel it here. The downtown area, surrounding areas around the edges of downtown, huge sense of community here, and people wanting to do good for LeGrande and for the future of LeGrande, and kind of thinking ahead, thinking of the future versus being stuck. That's something I can latch on to. Thinking ahead. Yeah.
That's interesting, because very generally people don't really consider small towns to be progressive in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I think that we have a pretty motivated, can I say, millennial crowd in some ways. People like us who are here trying to do good things and make LeGrande a great place. And like I said, friends of mine who are running the film festival and things like that. They're, pretty forward-thinking younger people who want to see good things come to LeGrande. And of course, the university helps a lot with that, brings a lot of culture and a lot of creativity to our town. And if there's anything we can do, I think just LeGrande as a whole needs to embrace that fact that we've got a huge creative base just up the hill here. And if we can figure out a way to keep these people in LeGrande after they graduate, that's a huge ticket there. And so I could see there being just more economic development. I can see a biotech industry, company be established out there at the Baum Industrial Park, that sort of thing. And we might have a shot at keeping some of these graduates around.
Absolutely. Well, it's kind of interesting because you definitely have sort of an ideological divide in LeGrande. There is the sort of more progressive and liberal campus,
Sure.
But then you have a very, very strong conservative citizen base. And in my experience, there has been a very, going to the EOU and going to town and coming in and getting involved with the town. Both of them are very, very wonderful communities, but they don't really touch a lot. And
Sure.
it's kind of,
there's a disconnect.
there is definitely an ideological disconnect.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to get, people to come down from EOU and to connect with the university. Now, some people say it's because of the university, some people say it's because of the city. Whatever it is, it's there. So it's in the question of how to get people involved from the university and people to stay, like myself, is a big one that I kind of wrestle with. And maybe I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, there's I understand, or I agree that there is certainly a bit of a disconnect in sort of these two factions around here. In my experience so far, I haven't found there to be a great deal of disagreement. I mean, both sides, I don't want to say both sides of the aisle, but both types of people want to stay in LeGrande. They want LeGrande to be a great place. I think people have different methods, but my personal experience so far has been welcoming. When I sit on a committee with people who are not my peers, they are folks that are older than me. They've been running a business for so long. They've been in LeGrande their entire lives. I don't find I disagree with people like that very often at all. I mean, it's usually the opposite. I mean, they're usually very happy to see somebody younger and motivated sitting on this committee or that board. And it's a place to be able to bounce ideas off each other and actually come to some common ground. And like I keep saying, moving forward. I try not to use that term progressive because it's just so equated with liberalism and all these other things. I mean, but just moving forward in a good, sensible manner and thinking about where LeGrande will be 20 years from now.
So that's a question for you. Where do you think LeGrande is going in 20 years?
Well, I mean, it's been pretty flat for the last 20 years as far as population growth, as far as I understand what I've researched and things. But I think, we've got a great thing going with our downtown being revitalized over the last several years. The people that I talk to that have lived here for a very long time, most of them agree that the last probably 6 or 7 years have been the beginning of a good turnaround, a real renaissance. And so I kind of landed here right as the train was leaving the station, you could say, in that. And so I was happy to jump on and say, these are great ideas. This is how we can do it better. Sometimes I'm listened to, sometimes I'm not.
I feel like that's just kind of life.
That's life. That's sitting on planning committees. I just was elected to be on the Union County Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. So to me, that's another opportunity to have maybe a younger, more forward-thinking voice on a board like that, and see where that can take us. I'm not going to single-handedly solve all of our problems. I'm not going to think I can. I'm not going to pretend I can.
I thought you were going to be here and I was going to get the answer.
Yeah.
And, well.
But I am excited to be sitting at a table with all these other folks who can hopefully collectively come up with some great ideas. That
sounds great. So how would you like to be involved in that 20-year plan of thinking forward, moving forward?
Well, I'd like to
as much as you can say, obviously. Because,
sure.
Being said, there are things that you got to keep in your pocket.
That's right. Well, I am going to keep some things in my pocket, but no, you can expect me to be sticking around and expect me to continue to be engaged, sitting on various committees and boards, planning and executing different events that hopefully most people are enjoying, and just seeing what else I can get involved in without getting too involved, I guess. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah.
And thank you, Grande Live, for listening in. This has been Coffee with Will and Ashley O'Toole, who came in and chatted with us today. And this video was brought to you by Northwest Furniture and Mattress and Grand Ronde Hospital. Be sure to like and share this video and tune in to lagrandeLive.tv for more local content.